Alright, so let's finish up the diagnostics and repairs on this 2007 Acura RDX Turbo. So yesterday we tightened up the wastegate linkage by 1 turn, drove the car, it had amazing power, and they actually set an overboost code, so the opposite problem of what it came in with. So this is the code P2263 turbocharger overboost problem. Why did that set? Well, let's look up the actual DTC description overboost problem right here. So I like that Honda does give a lot of good information on this complicated turbocharged system, and this is what the computer is looking for. So if you do full throttle, the wastegate goes from closed to open, the wastegate valve, and then the boost is then held at this maximum boost, control upper limit pressure by the wastegate actuator, the spring-loaded actuator, which is this piece right here. So we adjusted this rod. It was a little loose, so the wastegate wasn't being pulled closed all the way by the spring. See, there's a spring in here. So we adjusted it 1 turn to get the wastegate closed all the way. However, how does this system work? This spring is very important, and the preload on the rod is very important, because when the computer commands this solenoid, it actually commands it off, and then the the valve, the actuator itself, is actually tied to this hose right here, which is turbocharged, compressed air. Usually, when the solenoid is on, when you're just cruising, this hose is connected to atmosphere, which is, here's the air cleaner. So this is atmospheric air right here. But under full boost, the solenoid switches and connects to compressed air. So then, as the pressure builds up here to this preset, it starts pushing on the spring and opening the wastegate valve. So you can see how critical that preload is. So maybe tightening it 1 turn was a little too much. We just want to take the play out of the linkage but not preload the rod, because that will cause a minor overboost condition. Even if it's 1 or 2 psi over, the computer's not going to like that. And what it does, according to this chart, let's say the wastegate actuator is broken or stuck closed. If the boost goes over this limit, it actually cuts the fuel and closes the throttle to prevent engine damage. So this is a smart system, and it tries to keep the boost below this threshold. So what I'm going to do is loosen up that rod maybe a half a turn, so it'll be half a turn tighter than what it came in with. We'll take it on another test drive, make sure it's perfect under all driving conditions, and then it'll be ready to return to the customer. Yes, it does need an OEM alternator for that stupid charging light to go away, but it's charging fine, it's drivable. It'll need an oil change, but the owner said just diagnose the turbo problem, so that's what we're going to do. So let's readjust that wastegate linkage. Okay, so readjusted the wastegate linkage. So basically I backed it off until it could feel a little bit of play, and then tightened it up a 1/4 turn. So from where it was initially, it's about 3/4 of a turn in to have no play in the linkage when the wastegate is closed. So let's take it for a test drive with the scanner, see how it performs. So one of the best, most efficient ways to test for turbo performance is to just manually put it in 4th gear, with the paddle shifters, into higher gear, and then just floor it, and the boost will come up as the engine speeds up without shifting gears or over revving or anything. And I think that's the best way to test that. So we're going to look at scan data. I'm going to pick a nice stretch of road here and just floor it. See, here we go. PSI. Okay, let off. So that's a good capture right there. You can see the wastegate valve opened right here. And the turbo pressure didn't go above, I think it was 28 PSI. And the maximum, the limit was, I think 28 PSI here. So that should not have set a code. Let's try again. Felt good, nice and smooth, no bucking or jerking or fuel cuts. It's kind of hard to do this test drive while filming and watching scan data and being safe on the road. So just take a screenshot of that. And we'll pull over and scan it for codes, make sure everything's good. Alright, out on the open road, we got fifth gear. I'm going to floor it. There's the boost gauge. It's happy. Actually, I'm seeing if you slow down and really give it the beans, 32 PSI. It really goes. But is that overboost? Let's pull over and, well, actually we can just read the codes right now. Damn. Now it says 2263 turbocharge boost system performance problem. Ah, this car is so picky. Well, I was just cruising around the neighborhood here, like slow speed, stop signs, and then boom, check engine light pops on. So what happened here? What did it not like? I wasn't under any boost whatsoever. There it is, 2263. Huh. So this sucker set at 16 miles an hour, 27% throttle. Boost pressure is TC boost pressure 0.2 PSI. Okay. Map is at 14.2. Is there a problem with the boost sensor? MAF sensor is 40.3 grams per second. Okay. This isn't anything interesting here. We're fully warmed up, obviously. 25% on the accelerator pedal. So this is key right here. The map and the boost pressure sensor. So basically we have enough throttle where it's at atmosphere, so 14.2 psi, but the boost pressure is 0.2 psi. See, that doesn't make any sense to me. Wouldn't it be the same as the map, 14.2 psi? Let's see if we can recreate this. I'm going to clear the fault code out. Okay, clear fault memory completed. We're good. Let's look at that data stream again. And I just want map, MAF, RPM, just the basics. Here we go again. So I was just pulling up my lane, 10 miles an hour. So right in that zone where it's about atmosphere, the turbo starting to spool up, that's when it sets this 2263. Should we tighten up the wastegate linkage again and repeat this test drive and see if that makes a difference? I mean, this car is so picky. It's either overboost or underboost. I mean, come on, Honda. Let's see the freeze frame data one more time. So same exact freeze frame, 16.5 on the map, a little bit above atmosphere, and turbo pressure is 0.2 psi. So does it expect more? Does it expect this turbo to spool up a little bit faster, even at, a third throttle? 14 miles an hour. 31% on the throttle position sensor. Very interesting. Well, I'm really at a loss here of why this 2263 setting. The wastegate linkage seems to be nice and tight. I mean, everything is scalding hot back here. I'm trying to lift and push on the wastegate linkage. That seems to be fine. Does it need a new turbo to get rid of this stupid coat? I mean, it drives perfectly fine. It's just a logic problem right at this 30% throttle when I guess it expects the turbo to start spooling and it's a little slow to respond. This is why cars like this can be a real pain in the butt and in the wallet. Let's read up on the 2263 code details. Step 1 is inspect the air cleaner element. Okay, let's do that. And then just check all the ducts and pipes for boost leaks. Check the turbocharger boost sensor and baro sensor in the data list. Those were fine. Let's check the air cleaner. Alright, got the air cleaner out. Looks pretty clean, looks fresh. I blew it out just in case, but nothing to see here. So the pressure sensors are reading totally normally, within 0.15 or 0.2 psi of each other. I think that's within spec. So in the Advanced Diagnostics tab for the 2263, let's read the, so here's a little chart that the computer wants to see. As you open the throttle, it wants to see a fast increase in turbo pressure, but we don't know if this is 100% throttle, if it's 30% throttle, and if this is the response, then it's not happy. So this turbo engine is equipped with a mass airflow sensor to measure the amount of intake air, a turbocharger boost sensor measure boost pressure before the throttle, and a baro pressure sensor measure atmospheric pressure. Solenoids operate the turbocharger boost control valves. A turbocharger wastegate control valve and turbo bypass control valve are used to control boost pressure. Boost pressure characteristics are compared to intake air volume before boost pressure control, and if it is beyond a set value, it is diagnosed as a turbocharger boost system performance problem. Once per driving cycle, duration 4.2 seconds or more, judged by accumulation of several detections. And it says at supercharging area, not during supercharging control. The degree of boost pressure rise delay is 0.1 or less for at least 4.2 seconds. It's a supercharging condition which the throttle is not fully open at 1500 RPM or more. Is sustained for 2 seconds or more when accelerating for at least 10 times. That's the driving pattern. And then that's basically what it says. It's a 2-trip code. Not during supercharging control. So that's not when the wastegate is commanded open or the bypass valve. I don't think. So boost pressure characteristics are compared to intake air volume before boost pressure control. And if it is beyond a set value, it is diagnosed as a turbocharger boost system performance problem. And here, I mean, if there's not enough air going through the air cleaner, if there's a restriction, which there isn't, or intake air duct, turbocharger outlet pipe, charge air cooler inlet hose. So this is for the pressurized side, and then charge air cooler outlet tube. This is all on the pressure side. So is there a pressure leak? Are these parts okay? Boost sensor, baro sensor in the data list, are they within 2 inches of mercury or more? Well, they differ by 0.2 psi, so we can convert that to kPa. They say replace the boost sensor. Huh. So 0.2 psi is 1.4 kPa, and we're well within spec. So that's not the issue. Further down the flow chart here in the instructions, it says reset the PCM with the HDS. Do the PCM idle relearn procedure. Start the engine. Hold the engine speed at 3000. Warm it up. And then accelerate for 2 seconds or more under half throttle at least 10 times. Check for a temporary DTC. 2 seconds or more under half throttle. Okay. So it doesn't say replace the turbo. So this Acura RDX Turbo, we've checked basically all of the components on the turbo system. Checked the air cleaner, we checked the boost sensor, the map sensor, the mass airflow sensor. The wastegate actuator works perfectly fine. It drives great, but it's fussing about this turbo performance at a low RPM. When you're just starting to accelerate, there's atmosphere in, about atmospheric pressure in the intake manifold. That's when I think it expects the turbo to spool up a little faster. There's one more thing that we have left to check before condemning this turbo. That's the boost control actuator. So there's the wastegate actuator, then there's the boost control actuator. It's a separate flap. Let's take a look at some service info and see if we can check it on the car. So this turbocharger boost control system. There is this variable flap that directs the exhaust gases to either the inner portion of the turbine wheel to make it spool up faster. That's the high response mode. Then it transitions to let exhaust gas on the outer part. That's for high boost. Okay, so I want to know if this flap is working, and what controls that flap. Well, it's a very similar setup to the wastegate, which is right here. This is the turbocharger boost control actuator, which is kind of on the side here. Same thing, a little pressure actuator with a diaphragm controlled by a solenoid. The solenoid does click, I checked it with the scanner. But mechanically, is this thing moving? How do we check that? Well, we'll go under the hood, see if it's accessible. I want to get air right here to see if this rod moves. We'll just put 15 psi of compressed air right here. Same check that we did with the wastegate, and see if this sucker moves. So this actuator is impossible to get to on the vehicle. It's like below the turbo. You can't get to it from above or below, but we can get to the solenoid that controls the actuator. So I want to stick a hose somewhere on here to see if we can move the actuator. So the ports A, B, and C, it says to the charge air cooler, to the turbocharger bypass control valve, to the intake manifold. I'm sorry, there's 3 solenoids here. Boost control solenoid valve. This is the one we're looking for. So this is, port A is to atmosphere, port B is to the actual diaphragm, actuator, and port C is to the high pressure side, the turbocharger outlet pipe. And when this thing is off, when the engine's off or key's off, or if the computer's not commanding it on, ports B and C are connected. So B and C, port C goes to the high pressure side. This is the only port I can get to on the vehicle. And what I want to do is put a hose on here and just put compressed air in here, so we'll build some pressure on port B, and that will, so port B, I want to put pressure down here and try to move this rod. So my camera took a crap and I lost some footage of doing the actual test on this boost control actuator. I had the intercooler off, the hose rigged up to the solenoid, which is down there. It's impossible to see the rod, but in the next clip, which fortunately survived, we'll use a borescope to see if this rod moves when we apply pressure. I found the linkage with the borescope, feeding it by the exhaust shield underneath the turbo. Great spot for it, especially in the rusty northeast. So I'm going to focus you in on that and then apply some air to that actuator. And we'll see the rod try to move. Try to move this turbo flap, or whatever they call it. Ready? And see that? Oh, it's trying. That's 20 psi. That's more than the actuator would see in real life. So it's seized internally in the turbo, you know, with that flap. Unfortunately, I can't get a grip on it to try to manhandle it and move it. And that's it. So unfortunate for this Acura. So the fact that the actuator doesn't move, it's seized up. Does this thing need a turbo? I mean, we could say that's the end of the diagnosis. I just wanted to see if I could get it moving and fix this thing, no parts required. But if I can't get to it and it's already seized up and we spend another, you know, 2 hours peeling back the onion just to find out that it's not going to work, who's paying for that? So I have enough evidence to say, hey, you need a new turbocharger. With all, you know, all the linkages are included, the actuators, everything's in the turbo, and just say, that's it. You know, I'm not doing this job. I don't feel like it, but it's here for a diagnosis, 100% guaranteed, and that's one piece of the system that's definitely not working. Wastegate works fine, but this variable geometry boost control flap is stuck solid. So that's it. I'll give the customer a call, let them know the unfortunate news. I mean, the car drives fine, but once it sets the check engine light, you can't pass emissions inspection. The all-wheel drive is disabled, which is ridiculous. I hate when cars do that, but that's the way it is. I didn't buy it, I didn't build it, and you know, probably seized up because it lives in the Northeast Rust Belt. Maybe it was parked for a while, and you know, the turbo isn't new, and I mean, the thing's almost 20 years old or 17 years old. That's it. So I'll let you know what the owner says, but that's the end of the diagnosis. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Well, bonus footage here. Look up the parts, price, and labor. Holy crap, $7,200 for a new turbo, if it's available, and 7 hours of labor to replace it, which can easily double because the fasteners are rusty, things are going to snap. Oh boy. So in order to get this car to turn off the check engine light and enable the all-wheel drive and pass the emissions inspection, huge money pit. like 10 grand potentially, and you still have kind of a used vehicle with faded paint. That's unfortunate. It's not European, but it's an aging, high-performance vehicle, and the owner just wants to use it to, like, you know, drive around town. And if you're in a state that cares about the check engine light, that's gonna be tough. So I guess that's it. I talked it over with the owner, and he was actually prepared for the bad news. He said this problem has been happening for almost half a year now. He bought the car used. It's had a lot of issues, and he fixed most of them. You know, it still has a loose ball joint. It still has the aftermarket alternator, which is setting the warning light, this and that. So basically, money pit. I would not even accept doing the turbocharger replacement. Not worth my time or pain. But that's it. So unfortunate ending for this Acura. It still drives fine. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of warning lights, and it'll disable your all-wheel drive once the check engine light pops on. So you can just be there with a scanner, clear the code, and keep going. Now that's it. Thanks a lot for watching. Like I said, these cars leave a bad taste in my mouth. This one was not an exception. That's the way it is. So we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.